Welcome to Maverick Mind, the podcast. If you are a creative soul, really ready to unlock your potential and design your path to freedom on your terms, then you're in the right place. I'm your host, Ellie, designer, entrepreneur, yogi, and coach, and consider this your home to dive into the mindset, energy, and strategy to fast track your way to success. I'll also introduce you to some of the most creative, visionary, and maverick minds I know to share their insight, to feed your curiosity, and to inspire your next creation. I'm so happy you're here, so let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to a brand new episode of Maverick Mind. Happy Monday. I hope you all had a lovely week. It's lovely to be back here with you all. I was in Paris this week watching the Olympics and also just having a general mosey around Paris. When is that not a good idea? It's lovely now. I'm back in a very, very hot Barcelona. But I'm so excited to share this week's episode with you. This conversation was so inspiring, and this week I am joined by Dr. Clarissa Castillo-Ramsey. She is a very multi-passionate, multi-hyphenate, creative human being, as I'm sure a lot of you will resonate with. She is an award-winning transformational coach, organizational psychologist, abstract artist, and author. The kind of heart of what she does, everything she does and everything she creates is in the intersection between leadership, creativity, and wellness. And I think leadership and creativity are maybe two words we don't think to put together always. But on my journey personally, and also through guiding so many creatives now, I have noticed that the key to really bringing your vision to life, creating a business from selling your art or your product or your design or just creating a name for yourself in your creative industry requires leadership. Bringing that vision into life and kind of bringing others along that journey with you requires leadership. So those are skills that we really need to hone, but also it's an identity shift to go from I'm just an artist to actually, no, I'm a leader of a movement, or I'm leading the charge on this way. So that's, to me, something really, really vital that we need to work on as creatives. But something really inspiring about Clarissa is that she was diagnosed with a condition called Spasmodic Dysphonia. So I'm going to preface this conversation by saying that her voice is slightly quieter than mine, or quieter than normal. But what she says is so inspiring and so just heartfelt that I really hope you listen up, because this conversation was really, really just everything I think a lot of you will need to hear. If you're playing the victim in any way on your creative path, if you are feeling held back, if you are maybe making excuses or getting in your own way somehow, her story, which she shares at the end, around this condition, what it is and how it happened, will just really, really inspire you. So I cannot wait to hear what you think of it. If you love it, do share it on whatever platform you want to share it on. And if you do, tag me, so that's at Maverick Mind Co, and tag Clarissa at Dr.Clarissa Castillo-Ramsey on Instagram if that's where you're going to share it. Without any further ado, this is Dr. Clarissa Castillo-Ramsey. Hey Clarissa, welcome to Maverick Mind. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast and to share your wisdom and your insight. I think you're going to get so much value out of this conversation, everybody listening. Firstly, Clarissa, I'd really love to hear kind of your journey into, I suppose, the creative space or into art. I mean, you're an abstract artist, but you do millions of other things we'll dive into later. Really exciting things, but I'd love to know your journey kind of into creativity or into art specifically.
Yes, so I have been a lifelong artist. I started painting when I was a child, and I remember having a conversation with my mom, and she said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" We all get asked that question, right? And I said, "Oh, I want to be an artist." Like, I knew it was my passion. way back then. And my parents are physicians and they immigrated to the United States. And so my mom was like, child, that you'll be rich and famous after you pass away. So maybe it's time to choose. Maybe think about doing something else. Like art is fun, but it's not something that you can really live on. And I remember that conversation so distinctly when I was a little child. It didn't necessarily stop me from painting, but in the back of my head, I just thought, okay, well, I can't make a living doing this. I can't make money doing this. So, so I had that conversation at such a young age. Fast forward, I kind of dabbled in art through high school, and then I completely stopped in college because I wanted to be that responsible, like young adult and get the good job, get into a good school, all that stuff. And I didn't get back into creativity until my mid to late 20s when I went back to find my spiritual self and get back into that. I also grew up Catholic, and that did not jive with me at
No.
all. Catholic guilt is real, you guys. It's real. And I'm like, you know what? This is not my space. And I live in Los Angeles, and there's a beautiful spiritual center out here called Agape. And I started going to that church, and I noticed all the beautiful art in the sanctuary. And I found out who the artist was and that he led retreats, and his name is Razuli. And I started doing his retreats and really got back into that creative space. And it was so liberating because the way that he taught art was, this is coming from your soul. This is coming from source. This is coming from divine energy. So he didn't really even teach techniques per se. It was just really abstract flow. And he was so big into not, you can't get attached to your painting. So he would make a swap with other retreat goers so that by the time we left the retreat, like our art was really like on top of somebody else's. And then I just got back into painting again. And even though it's not my full-time job, I do shows. I create. I have a journal. I have different merchandise with my art, and it's the ultimate self-care tool that I have is making art.
Amazing. This I firstly I just want to say I love that challenge of painting on top of someone else's art. I think that's such a great idea. But I think to go back to backtrack a little bit further, I think that that belief that you only make it as an artist after you die, or
Right.
or it's just something that you're never going to make money doing is a belief that we all hold, I think, consciously or subconsciously as creative people, because it's such a narrative within our society that if you're an artist, you've got to be broke or broken or both.
Yeah.
Whereas I really think that actually that whole narrative stifles our creativity so much. Because
Oh,
if you are, then
absolutely.
nothing will kill your creativity more than bad mental health or being broke, actually.
Yes, that's right.
Because it kind of keeps us in that survival space, and you're not never really going to get out of that, or it's hard to get out of that space, for
Yes,
sure. So
for
it's
sure.
incredible that even kind of through everything you still had that pulling, you still had that call to explore it in some way. And I think that I often tell people that I think art being our only job or maybe our whole life is not for everybody. I think
Right.
some of us are meant to be more multi-hyphenate, multi-passionate
Yeah,
human beings. And I feel like
that's me for sure.
yeah, I was gonna say your journey or like your where you've gone from that point has been a real testament to that you can do many different things, have impact in many different ways. And it all kind of threads together in this really beautiful, beautiful way.
Yeah,
So
and I
you,
think, oh, I was just gonna say, and you can leverage your art, whether you sell pieces, make music, you can also use it as a way to connect with other people. So something I like to do is just have creative circles where we get together and we meditate, we journal, and then we just create. We create to create and just feel good and get back to center. Because, like you said, when you're feeling broke and broken, it you're like operating outside of yourself. And just through the act of creating, I think that is such a healing tool to get back to who you are.
absolutely, yeah, definitely. I think, well, whatever kind of journey you're taking, whether you are pursuing your creativity, or whatever your creative expression might be as your only path, or whether you are going more the multi hyphenate route, there's neither is better or worse. I don't think it really depends on the
Yes.
person. I think you need moments where you can surrender the pressure and just create for the sake of creating, as you say, just do it out of play and curiosity, and maybe as a healing tool or a processing tool. So I think that sounds so exciting. It was also such a great idea to get people together to do it, because creative path can be a lonely, lonely path.
It can. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Like the entrepreneurial path. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah, the entrepreneurial path can be the loneliest road. So finding people or spaces, I think, where you can be in the room with people that are doing something vaguely similar to you, that make you don't,
Yeah.
so you don't feel like quite such a an alien in this world sometimes.
Yes. Yeah.
And you create loads of spaces like that. So I've seen you do like summits and online summits and things like that. Can you speak a little bit onto maybe the inspiration to create those spaces?
Oh, yeah. So I was in corporate for almost 30 years, and I always had a long-term goal to work for myself. And honestly, I was like, I just want to be a coach because that's what I got my education in, organizational psychology, and I love working with people. So that was my long-term goal, and I didn't know how I was going to necessarily do it. And so I thought, I know I'm not the only person who wants to transition out of the corporate space and start their own thing. So I thought, why not put, I love collaboration. I love connecting with people. So I thought, why not put together an event to help other people? And this was during the pandemic. So everybody was forced to be on their computer. And I thought this is a great way to reach different people, a wide audience who are kind of going through the same thing. And so my very first summit I launched towards the end of 2020, and it was called From Employee to Entrepreneur. And it really was not only for all the attendees, but it was also for me. So I brought on different people to talk about different aspects of entrepreneurship. And that model evolved over time because as I got on this path, I thought, gosh, I really want to connect with those creatives who are in an ill-fitting job, unable to express themselves, who are interested in maybe exploring the creative entrepreneurial path. So the summit kind of elevated into that more specific audience. And again, it was still to help me on my path, but it was also there to help other people see what's possible. And so I brought on so many different creatives. And Ellie, if I knew you back then, I would have had you on there too. Maybe for a future one.
For sure.
Yeah. And it was just, and as an organizational psychologist, I'm always wanting to track, data on like my events. And so I did a pre and a post survey. I do it for all my events. And the feedback after people attended these summits just made my heart sing, because really what I wanted to affect was that it's possible. It's absolutely possible. Whatever you think in your mind, you can achieve in reality. And having all these beautiful artists and they weren't all painters. I had musicians, I had web designers, I had calligraphers, and it was just such a they've been beautiful events to help really show people a path. It's possible, and just a couple of things to get started so that they can take action.
That's so incredible, and I think it's so valuable. Well, obviously, if you go from the feedback that you got, but I think especially as creatives, I think, as I said before, with that whole narrative of artists and creatives got to be broken, we do carry this sort of subconscious disbelief that what we want or what's in our mind is actually possible. We have these like big
Yes.
visionary ideas, but this belief that actually that's just a dream or that's not possible for us, or, you know, X amount of businesses fail within the first year, and how small is it
Yes.
likely to get on stage like Adele, you know?
Right.
But actually, anything is possible. And it really
That's
takes, I think, it takes a certain kind of mindset to get to that space. And not always is that aligned with talent. It can be, really incredible artists of all disciplines maybe don't get to where they want to get to just because they fall into that trap of believing it's impossible. Whereas I think there's a kind of a marriage of talent and mindset will get you to where you
yes.
want to get to. And I think that takes exercising the muscle of self leadership, I think, to get
Yes.
yourself there. And you kind of specialize in leadership too, which I think is exciting to go and bring together creativity and leadership. Because I think in any field, you can't really be a true leader in this world if you don't have a creative mind. But it's
I
not
agree. Yeah.
something that within the creative world we don't really see ourselves as leaders. Often we think it's a creative path is a very lonely, introspective, personal path. We don't really realize perhaps that when you're putting art out into the world or creating a business in the world, that's actually leadership
It
in
is.
motion. So I'd really love to maybe dive into your experience of marrying those two worlds of leadership and creativity, and kind of maybe the impact that you have seen in your career or through your own path of becoming a creative
Yes.
leader. I'd love to know.
Happy to answer that. And so, yeah, I think, in my past life in the corporate space, I got a chance to work with individuals at all levels. And in my eyes, you don't need a title of leader to be a leader. Whatever your job is, you're the leader in that job. And that is how I always taught, is whether you have director or manager or vice president or chief in your title or not, it starts with your core values and who you are, no matter what. And that's where I start with people, is what do you value? And, that takes some creativity. Well, what do I value? What are the things I'm attracted to? And really doing a deep dive inventory of who you are, what you stand for, what you're passionate about. And you can bring those things into your work, whether you're in an organization or working for yourself. And one thing that I love to do is have people create vision boards. And I think that is a great way for people to begin to tap into their creative self. Maybe they're not necessarily thinking that, but just asking them different questions like, you know, how do you how do you see yourself? Like, just envision yourself as the, let's say, CEO of your business. And maybe you don't feel that way right now, but let's just throw that to the side and just use your imagination. What images do you see? Who's around you? Where are you? And using your five senses to really explore that. And it's so funny because I was like, I don't know if people in corporate are going to be ready for that, like be interested in that. And I did it as a team building exercise with um with my group. And then other people heard about it. Like, ooh, I want to do that too. I want to do that with my team. And I think, creatives have so many superpowers that I'm just going to say traditional leaders don't. And one of them is imagination. So, as a creative, I just invite you to remember that. You might express it in your work, but think about that as you, as the leader of your business or your organization or whatever it is, and really identify as that person, because you do have so much to offer. I know it, and I know that. I also have people create what I call a hype list, HYPE, and I think I got that from Marie Forleo, so I can't really claim that as my own. But it's just thinking about all the achievements that you have already had, because you've gotten this far in your life by no accident. And it's just remembering those moments, whether they were easy achievements, difficult achievements, and really analyzing, how did I get there? And if you can do it for that, you can continue to do it on your path. And so I think marrying leadership and creativity, using your imagination, leveraging your intuition, because as artists we have like nudges that I think that we naturally tend to follow. And I say, if leaders can explore that and listen to what's called like, this idea keeps coming back, it keeps coming back, it keeps coming back. I think that's a sign to do something with that. And so I think that is also how creativity and leadership can blend together. And the last superpower that I think creatives really have is that, and it kind of blends in with intuition, but that curiosity. And I wonder what would happen if I, took a chance on this. I'm just going to say workshop idea that I had, and be curious about following that thread. So, so that's kind of how I see those two intertwining.
Amazing. Yeah, I love the idea, or I suppose the practice of not only doing a vision board but also doing that hype list. I think that's really incredible, because I
Yes.
think often when we're creating something like a vision board or just thinking about our vision of what we want to create with our lives, we can, I mean, it's so common whenever I do vision boards or teach people how to do vision boards, you have to do one and then you have to like kind of screw it up and make another one that's dreaming a little bit bigger. It's like,
Yeah.
what, the first one you get all the realistic things out, and then you have to do the one that's like, no, this is the big vision. This is like, let's just like challenge ourselves a little bit here. But I think to hype yourself up to believe that you could do all those things on the big vision, it's really helpful to have a reminder of things that you've done in the past. Because I think
That's right.
often when we are visionary human beings, maybe ambitious human beings, we do something that most people would think is like really incredible, but we just like shrug your shoulders, like, "Bah, easy, you
Yeah.
know," or like on to the next thing. Now I want to do this thing now. So I think to go back to kind of pat yourself on the back for things that you've done in the past, because it really does energize you into believing, no, actually I could bring that big, bold
Yes.
ass vision to life. And actually I do have the tools like the intuition and the curiosity to bring that to life. And I think with something like intuition, something I talk about a lot, because it's been a powerful force in my life, and I'm sure yours as well. But I think also similarly to that hype list is sort of going back into real times in your past where you have listened to that intuition and it's become something
Yes.
probably really left of field, but taken you into a really incredible place. So you have that almost validation that's okay, well, I trusted that nudge before and it turned out pretty good. So let's
Yes.
keep trusting that and keep asking questions and keep going into that curious mind, which curiosity is really the fuel behind most creativity. And I think you're so right that a lot of maybe traditional people that we would call a leader who lack that creative edge a little bit because they follow too much the science, I suppose, too much of like
Yes.
the masculine, the structure, the science, the data, which is all great stuff, but they don't listen to that internal nudge
Yes.
or follow curious, random curiosities that us
Yes.
creatives are kind of obsessed with. Um,
Right.
so I think that uh, that trust is where the leadership comes from. I suppose it's kind of trusting in those inner nudges and trusting in your curiosities and where whatever you believe in, whether it's you believe it's coming from you or whether you believe it's an idea is being channeled through you, it's trusting where that comes from. But there's always going to be points on the path where we feel like we're maybe going against the grain a little bit too much and we want to shrink back into fitting in with others. I mean, is there
Yes.
a time on your path that you felt like that, or maybe some tool that you use to guide people through when they are feeling in that maybe season of maybe I should fit in more?
And I had this conversation actually yesterday because I'm teaching a class called Soulful Leadership Expression. And I think it can be really easy to just fall back into old patterns. And let's, let's just pretend like, you know, you think you can't do something like, oh, I can't do this. Um, this is too weird. I don't know. I feel like that. I get that sometimes. Like, I feel like, oh my gosh, am I being too weird? And what I say to that is any like that negative self-talk that we often get, or we want to shrink back, is just to put that belief on trial and ask yourself, like, how do I know this is true 100%? Is this true 100%? That if this thing that I'm feeling called to do, even though it's not what everybody else is doing, that it's going to crash and burn. And I just say, like, put it on trial. Is this really true? What's your evidence? And then play out what's the worst case scenario, which I think a lot of people are good at. I do that too, and you sometimes catastrophize. Fine, do it. What's the worst? Are you gonna die? I always ask myself, if I do this, am I gonna die? No, I'm not gonna die. Maybe my ego gets hurt. Maybe, maybe I fall flat on my face, but I'm not gonna die. And I think what people don't often do is do the reverse. Well, what's the best case scenario that can happen from this? The best case scenario is this weird idea that I have is it's going to take off. I'm going to see it through. I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to trust myself and start trusting that muscle. And um, and I'll give you an example. So I'm an artist, and I was like, bringing art into the workplace I think that is such a great idea. So I did. I had my team. One morning, we just painted, and my boss came in and saw us painting. I didn't tell her what I was doing. And, and so we painted. She kind of had a look, which I knew that meant something. And then she left. And then she called me in her office and was like, So I noticed you guys were painting. Like, what was up with that? What was behind that? And I just said, you know what? The team has been working so hard, and I thought it would be a nice way to help them reset and just get back into a space of, you know what? Work is fun. Work can be fun. And we didn't. I don't think she quite got it. I appreciated it, but I even kind of felt like for a brief second, was that wrong? Should I not have done it? And then I left and I said, no, you know what? My team needed that and they enjoyed it. And I think this is going to help them just get back to center. And it's funny because months later, then we had other team building exercises with our bigger group, and she was like, "Okay, it's almost Halloween. We're gonna paint pumpkins." And I thought, "Yeah, here we go, doing more artistic stuff." And who knows if that would ever happen if I wouldn't have just felt my like weird intuition to have my team do something as simple as painting, even though that kind of felt like against the grain.
Absolutely, yeah. And but I guess in a normal corporate setting, it's against the grain. But when in a creative setting, it's totally normal. It's
Yeah.
let's do this to get back into our bodies, just to play a little bit and do it without any expectation. And it's something that's a really common thing within the creative process to just free yourself up after you've been perhaps taking it a little bit too seriously.
Yes. And
So to bring that into a I suppose non-traditionally creative
yeah,
setting is really inspired actually. And I think, yeah, it's again really sticking to your guns and kind of honoring your truth, which is something that I think a lot of us find quite hard, especially if we maybe aren't always in a room surrounded by people that get it.
yes.
So to really have that conviction behind your voice is again a real leadership quality, and conviction behind whatever your message might be behind your artwork. If you have a message, whether your artwork's just something fun, that's also a message in itself. But if you're building a brand perhaps and you have a real vision and message behind that, sticking to that message can be quite hard, and it's always a game of exercising that conviction muscle, which again is something that really does take leadership skills. I mean, are there tools or experiences you've had or tools that you can share that help exercise that conviction muscle, or can strengthen, I should say, that conviction muscle?
Yeah, I think, again, going back to what you have already achieved, and I love what you said about your intuition file and tapping back into that. And I would also say, you know, community is so important when you're starting to feel like you're off track. There's not a shortage of places that you can connect with to surround yourself with other like-minded people to help remind you of who you are and to help get you back into that space of where you need to be. And the tools that I give to all people are, when you're starting to feel that overwhelm, that is a sign to stop and like do something else. Um, like phone a friend, go out for a nature walk, do the laundry. And I know that might sound stupid and mundane, but often those simple things, get back in your body, are tools that work all around to help us reset. And
Absolutely.
ask
And all
yourself,
those.
oh, I was just going to say, and maybe you're just hungry. Maybe you're just thirsty. really truly, like, maybe those basic needs, we can overlook them, especially as creatives. Once you get into your work and you don't stop, that is also something to ask yourself, maybe are all my needs, my basic needs, being met too?
Absolutely. I mean, I think without those basic needs being met, we can't kind of go up into maybe more abstract thinking because our nervous system is always in that survival mode. And I suppose all those things you
Right.
just listed are actually really grounding, nurturing, and as you say, basic things to do, like doing the laundry or going for a walk. The mind is often a bit more of a restful space. And sometimes then
Yes.
subconscious thoughts can kind of come to the forefront, or like little nuggets of inspiration might start to slowly, in a very calm way, come together and go, oh, right, like there's an intuitive thought, or there's an idea, or there's something that I could play with, or something subtle that I could start to follow in some way. But I think definitely it comes from, I always say, it comes from when you're in a receptive space rather
Yes.
than in a doing, you're in a receiving
Yes.
space, which I think is a lot why a lot of creatives have to create a lot of space in their day. You can't cram
Yes.
your day with stuff because you've got to have time to do nothing, which is
That's right.
again so against what we're taught in society to be like, especially if you come from corporate. I've never been in corporate, so I don't know, but
Yeah.
especially if
Good
you
for
have
you.
been in corporate, managed to
It's a
dodge that
grind.
one.
It's a
Managed to dodge
grind.
that. um, yeah, I think especially if you come from maybe a more traditional workplace, or even just through us, the society that we live in, it's very do. And to be a truly creative or live a truly creative life, we need space to be. And
Yes.
sometimes it can feel really, really uncomfortable when you're trying to make a life based on what you create, or kind of in honor of your art or in honor of your creativity. It feels so left of field compared to the rest of the world. It feels
Right.
like you have to almost give yourself quite a radical permission slip to live in a totally different way to everyone else, you
For
know?
sure. Yeah. And going through that contrast, because when I was in it, it was crazy how many hours I spent at work. It was more than with family. And I used to travel a ton. And when I transitioned into entrepreneurship, um, I, I thought, okay, cool. Now I can slow down and I don't have to do all this stuff. But I found myself getting into that trap of, now I went from a 9 to 5 to a 24/7. And I was on and on, like, much, so much so that I did burn out quickly. And my voice I got sick, and then my voice got impacted. And that happened last year. And even though once that happened, I slowed it way down. Like, I barely worked last year. And I'm thankful for the corporate times, because that is really how I was able to live, was through that. But it really just, I think, needed to happen. Our body tells us what's up, right? Like, this, our brain, tells us stuff, but our body really shows us is the scorecard. And I had to slow it down. And I'm a Taurus. That's my sign. I'm an earth sign. So I by nature like to move slow, but I was so conditioned to, like, keep up, keep producing, keeping all those goals in mind. And I've had to do a major reset. And I just feel so much better about it. And to your point, my days are slow, and I would not go back to any other way.
I don't think you can after you've lived the slow life.
Can't.
You cannot go back.
I can't. I can't.
I'd really love to touch on your voice a little bit because you use your voice so much in your life. You have a podcast, you're a coach, you have run these summits and everything. There's so much kind of involving your voice. And I suppose
Yes.
not directly your voice, but art is also an expression which comes through, like if we're
Yes.
speaking in chakra speak, it comes through the throat. Um,
Right.
so I'd love to, I think that's something a lot of people would have given up at that point. I think a lot of people would have
Yes.
said, well, I can't do this, so I'm not going to do anything. And I'd love to
Right.
know or kind of get an insight into the resilience or I suppose the drive to keep doing what you feel is your purpose or passion despite maybe it being difficult for you or
Yeah.
being a challenge or feeling a little bit defeated by it.
Yeah. Thank you. So I definitely, like last year was such a long reflection year. I felt so defeated. And this is funny. Like it really happened when I was on a speaker panel about leadership. And I was at an event and I was one of, I think there were like four of us on the panel. And the moderator asked me a question and like at least you can hear me making words. Back then it was so choppy and so soft, like I could barely get words out and I just had to apologize to the audience. I'm like, I was sick a couple months ago. I don't know what's happening, but after the event, so many people came up to me. Thank God they could understand me, and they just said, "Thank you for sharing your story." And that gave me a little boost of, okay, this thing isn't so bad. But then I went to the doctor after that and was diagnosed with spasmodic dysphonia, which basically means my vocal cord spasm. And it is like a neurological condition. A piece of my brain went a little haywire. And after I got that diagnosis, that sent me in a tailspin. And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do my podcast? How am I going to do this? And I just decided, well, I just, I'm gonna, I just can't stop. And what I did was, I think for that time, I went back into the Summit archives and took some pre recorded interviews that I had done to help save my voice. And I did have some clients that I was wrapping up with. But then after that, I just kind of fell into a depression and um, and just totally came to a halt for a while and stopped taking on anything new. And it was just, I don't know, I can't remember the exact point, but what helped me was just admitting, like, I feel defeated and sharing my story of what's going on. And once I shared that truth, that's when things started to pick up. But I went through a lot of 2023. Yeah. Because this was like in the springtime when it happened. And so I spent most of my time like, just sitting with that and asking, okay, what's happening? And what am I not saying? Because that was a piece of it too. I felt like up until that point, I was so focused on helping people move from cubicle to creative life. And I'm passionate about helping people see new possibilities and seeing themselves the way that they truly are. A lot of like your work is really helping people remove those blocks so they can live that creative life, whatever that means. And uh, um, and so I started to work with somebody just basically going back into my core self, because I think something that can also happen with the entrepreneurial life, the creator life, is you start something and then you feel like you have to continue doing it. I've gotten this advice, like, you do something once, and if it doesn't work out, you keep doing it until it shifts. And I was doing that, but there was still something missing, and I wasn't listening to my intuitive self. And so once I just wrapped myself with all of that, admitted, like, hey, I'm going through a thing here. And once I expressed, I'm going to just start experimenting, doing different things, and allowing myself to have fun again and just test out different things, because I started to feel like on this path, I was getting known to be this one thing, and I'm not that. I'm just so multi-passionate, and I like doing different things. And so my point in all of this, sharing all of this, is again going back to that creative superpower of your intuition and leaning into that and getting into alignment with who you are, and we're ever evolving. So who you are today, you're probably not going to be the same exact person in a year or 2 years, 5 years. And so that's really what's going on with me and my work. And because of this, I'm really starting to get into hosting in-person retreats, like for women, and getting back to that wellness, whole wellness, and using creativity to get back to get back to health. So that's something that I'm kind of exploring it and leaning into.
Incredible. That's such a transformative story. I think that, you know, I think, as I said at the beginning of that question, it's really easy to become a victim to
Yeah.
your circumstance instead of, I mean, yeah, maybe being a sad hero for a little while,
Yeah.
but still you kind of become or kind of use it to your advantage in some way, or then use it for another part of your message, I suppose is a word
Yes.
to use, in another way. But I think that question that you came back to is probably the most powerful question that we can ask if we're ever in a depressive state, or even just in a feeling of inauthenticity, is what am I not saying?
Yes.
That is so powerful, because I think a lot of us, we do sit on what we really mean a lot of the time.
Yes.
Or kind of swallow what we mean to, I don't know, to fit in some box that we've created for ourselves, or we feel other people are creating for us, or to stay known for one image, or to fit in, or allow people to like us better. There's so many reasons why we do that,
Yes.
or we feel ashamed about saying something. And I think in those moments when you have something that you realize you're not saying out loud, and you're still not sure even the words to say out loud, that's where art and creativity can be a really amazing tool to express what needs to be expressed. So I think the retreat idea is such an incredible space to do that, kind of a safe space to express what needs to express, whatever way it comes out, whether that is through actual saying it, or whether that comes through an abstract means of drawing or painting,
Yes.
or something else. And yeah, I guess it's turning your pain into your power.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and it's I mean, for it to happen on stage must have been
I
a
know.
real challenge for you. So to keep it together, like, props to you for that.
Yeah. I was like, and then the room was filled, and I was like, okay, I just have to roll with this. I just have to, like, I just have to say what's going on. I don't know at that time, I didn't know exactly what was happening. But yeah, and I was having a chat with one of my one-on-one clients, and I always ask for feedback because I think that's so important. And my client said, Clarissa, like, I chose you because of your voice, because I knew that you had the determination to keep moving forward. So that meant a lot.
That's really incredible feedback, and I can totally see why someone would. And it's something that I tell my clients a lot when they're struggling to maybe share what they really want to share, is that thing that you think will make you unlovable, that thing that you really believe everyone's gonna shun you for, that thing that you're too afraid to express is the key to your success. It is the thing that will connect you to people the most. And to really own that, I think, shows incredible leadership. It takes a journey to get there for sure. You might not like fully own it on day one, but yeah, I mean, I think it really does show incredible leadership and incredible, like you're the living, breathing like walking, talking embodiment of your message, really.
Yeah.
And being that walking, talking embodiment of your message, wherever that is, whether that's your message or whether that's someone listening, is the most magnetic thing in the world, I think.
Yeah. And I think we get to feel the feels. And because I used to just want to bypass like anything negative. And I think just sitting with it for a little bit, maybe longer than I wanted to, but I definitely feel like I'm stronger on the other side.
Absolutely. And I think that in a lot of cultures, but specific, I think more in the Western culture, we want to project out this like happy image all the time. We want to be like empowered and happy and everything's good and everything's fine. How are you today? I'm good.
Right.
We really do avoid that shadow side or maybe the darkness, but it's only really through that's the darkness, or maybe like hard times or challenges or moments of where you don't really believe in yourself. That's the place where you learn the most.
Yes, for sure.
And through all that learning and insight that you gather from those spaces, that does make you much stronger in yourself as a person, stronger in your conviction behind who you are, and know yourself so much deeper, which can then be filtered into your work, whatever work that may be. And then when you can get to a point where you can really, really own it, that's when you become that leader in your space and more magnetic to the people that are really aligned to follow whatever you're vibing with.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, incredible. That seems like a good message to end on. It's quite a powerful story to end with. But I think that people will find it, or listeners will find it, really, really insightful, really inspiring, energizing, and hope everyone listening, you've got something good out of today's episode here with Clarissa. So thank you so much for joining me on today's episode, and I'll leave, of course, everything you need to know about Clarissa in the show notes, links to everything, so you can stalk her appropriately. And thanks again so much for coming on.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Maverick Mind. I hope that you've loved it, and if you have, I would appreciate it so much if you would subscribe and write a 5-star review on wherever you're listening to this podcast from. If you'd like to keep the conversation going, I invite you to join me over on Instagram at maverickmindco or on my website maverickmind.elliefoden.com. And I'll see you in another podcast very, very soon.